All right, I think this is a great time to get started. So hello, folks. My name is Caroline, and I will appear for you in a second so that I'm not just kind of a disembodied voice. So thank you for joining us tonight for mapping. Very exciting. This is the fourth webinar in our series. So next week we have one called Refining Your Ride, which is about gearing and braking. And then the week after that, we have a touring webinar that's going to be really exciting. So feel free to join us and sign up for those ones as well. And I'm going to put the registration page in the chat just in case folks want to join us for some of the upcoming webinars. Okay, so Safe Cycling Thunder Bay is a program that's funded by the city. It's delivered by EcoSuperior. And today we have 4 instructors on to talk about urban and rural riding. So I'm going to be talking about urban riding, and so is Ken. And Janet and Ashley will be talking about rural riding. So I'll just get our instructors to introduce themselves briefly. So I'll pass you over to Janet for a second for her introduction.
Hi, everybody. I'm Janet. I've been a safe cycling instructor for just over a year now. I have a road bike. I do like to ride urban, but my favorite is rural riding. One of my favorite routes is the Stanley Loop. I find it challenging with the hills, and I get to practice using my gearing on my bike. I'm going to pass you over to Ashley now.
Hello, my name's Ashley. I've been a safe cycling instructor for probably about the last 4 years, I want to say. I have a few bikes actually, so I have like what I would call a commuter bike, a mountain bike that I like to ride, sometimes around like Shinny Mines and stuff like that, but I do some riding in Grand Marais as well. And then I also have a fat bike, which is nice for the winter time and things like that. And sometimes I'll take it to Shinny Mines too. And then, so some of my favorite routes are, so I do like riding in the city a lot, like commuting and things like that, mostly commuting to work, sometimes to get groceries. But lately I've been doing a lot of rural riding, and some of my favorite routes would be out to Kekabeka and back, to Wild Goose. And then also my favorite kind of in-town, rural-ish kind of ride would be out to Mission Marsh, so across the bridge in the East End. It's still in the city, but it's kind of got a rural feel, so I like it a lot. And now I'm going to pass it off to Ken.
Hi, I'm Ken Shields, and I've been a safe cycling instructor for 4 years now. My riding is typically for a purpose, so commuting to work, shopping, and then some recreation riding. We have 3 bikes in our stable. We've got my basic hybrid bike, and then there's a tandem bike that my wife and I use, and just acquired a fat bike. So one of my favorite things to do as part of this course is to figure out a way to get from A to B for all ages and levels of riders. So back to Caroline.
Okay, and I realized that I forgot to switch the pin video over to Janet. So Janet, I'm going to switch it over to you just so people can see what you look like. And if you could just wave and say hello, that would be great.
Hi, everybody.
Perfect. Thanks, Janet. Okay, a couple more housekeeping items to run through before we really delve in. We are recording all of the webinars. They're going to be available at the link that I already shared at the chat. And I'm a little bit delayed in getting our previous 2 up, but we have, let's see, we did ABC Quick Check, so safety in your own bike, that has the webinar up, and I'm currently working on getting our urban riding fundamentals and our webinar on cleaning your bike online. So you'll be able to check out those as well as this one. So the goal for today's course is that you'll gain the skills and knowledge to try new urban and rural routes. You'll gain some mapping knowledge, and ultimately we want you to ride more. We normally offer in-person cycling courses with very small groups, so an average of 4 participants. The webinar is great because it allows more people to sign up. We had, I think, 23 registered today. But I do want to give you the opportunity to have your individual questions answered and really have those needs met in the same way that you would in an in-person course. So we'd like to know, are there any trouble spots where you'd like help navigating a new route? Are there areas you want to explore more? Or just where do you love to ride? So if you can type that into the chat, that would be fantastic. And then the other thing to know while I'm giving you a chance to type is that there will be a Q&A at the end of the session. But if you have any questions partway, just go ahead and answer them in the chat, or ask them rather in the chat. One of the instructors might be able to respond to you in the chat, but then we'll also review any questions in the chat at the end. So I'm just going to give folks another second to type either where they want to ride or where they love riding or where they want to learn more routes. Perfect. Cass has said, best route between Fort William and Port Arthur because the trails don't connect. And knowing that, we did plan that into this course. So we will be addressing that. Ken will take care of that in a bit. And then earlier, Bob said, my husband and I started riding in the last 2 months and are excited to learn some new routes. We are currently riding to Hillcrest Park, University, and College from River Terrace. And that's totally awesome because you've got great trails all through there. So that's a nice place where it's kind of comfortable to be off-road through the university and college, and then through to Hillcrest Park. You guys have some great just residential riding. So that's fantastic. Perfect. I'll just give folks another minute. All right, so maybe it's, oh, haha, that's Bob and Joanne. Okay, great. All right, so I'll go ahead and get sharing screen here and share the presentation, and we will just start delving right in. So Ken, Janet, Ashley, can you guys see this? I'm sharing successfully. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you everybody for joining us today for mapping your route. Today we are going to cover 4 main topics. We're going to cover planning basics for urban and for rural, using Google Maps. So we'll do a little bit of a how-to there, and talk about both urban and rural route planning. And with that, that ends my introduction, and I'll pass you guys over to Ken.
Hi there, everybody. So packing, if you are setting out, one of the things that kind of drives me crazy is you get somewhere and you go, what? I didn't bring these things. So definitely a lock. They say that you should spend about 10% of what your bike is worth on your lock. And don't forget your key, because that's a frustrating thing. And lights, because if you set out in, say, the evening, and especially in the spring and fall, and find yourself after dark, you need your lights half hour before sunset and a half hour after sunrise. So those are important. Panniers and jacket are great. Sometimes in the wintertime, I'll use my pack sack instead, just to spend less time packing my bike in the wintertime. And the jacket, of course, because in Thunder Bay and anywhere north in Canada pretty well, your temperature can fluctuate quite a bit, and it's good to be comfortable. And I've got water and snacks down here. So bring your sport bottle attached, and snacks I put on here because I'm not sure if you're aware, but there is a pandemic and it's a little harder to get in and out of stores nowadays. And so tube, pump, and tools. So I don't know if you know about Murphy's Law, but things can go wrong. And if you don't want to bring those items with you, then at least consider a phone. and you can call for help, call a friend, whatever. Get it out to figure out where you are if you're lost, and your wallet for your tap card or whatever for shopping, and then bus money should you get stuck on, say, Memorial Avenue in the middle of winter when your chain breaks. That was a sad story. And so now also, because we're in a pandemic, I'm packing a mask and hand sanitizer for my shopping trips. So next slide, please. So safe riding includes some planning, and it depends on where you're going, who you're going with, the people you're with. Are they strong cyclists or not? Are they 8 years old? Are they 88 years old? You have to consider terrain and hills and such. So that's some of the things you might want to think through before you go. There's some help other than you relying on yourself. If you have a CAA membership, it extends to your bicycle. And there's a system with Commute Ontario for registered workplaces like the City of Thunder Bay, Con College, Eco Superior, Hatch Limited, and the Lakehead University. And they reimburse commuters to a maximum of $75 per ride. If you have a personal or family illness, accident, injury, or emergency situation, unscheduled overtime approved by a supervisor, or an unplanned absence of a carpooling partner, then you can give them a ring or connect with them, and they will pay for whatever it took to get you home. And we're going to show how to use Google Maps to do some planning, how to get around. So next slide, please. So this is a little look at the active transportation map. We have an overview. I was going to put a link in the chat. I'll do it afterwards, where you can find this map. I'm just going to share the screen here and bring up my browser so I can show you some trouble spots with this map. So here is intercity area, and that was actually brought up on the chat because there's some significant gaps in the trail maps. They just stop. So here's behind McIntyre Mall, and it just stops at Memorial and May Street. So these are things that advocates are working to encourage council and administration to do, and administration is fully aware of these problems. They've even got a new transportation master plan that addresses all these items, and it just takes a few little details like money. So now to do a map on your own, this is Google. So the first step you want to take to make a proper cycling map is to find these little icons along the top and choose cycling. And when you do that, it will select bike lanes. I've just got one here from Castle Green to Empire Street. It just clicked on the map, and that sounds like a place for my in Westport someplace. So so you'll notice that Google Maps will suggest a number of ways. This this route on the top is going to take you through some nice bike lanes and whatnot. There are some more direct routes that it's taking you through. This is that dog park route. We'll look at it a little closer, and you'll see that it's giving you lots of different ways to get across town. So this is a fun thing just to do and say, well, I'm going to try going through the city one direction and then come back on the trails or something to that effect. So the Google Maps gives you a number of tools. So if you find a spot and you say, well, I don't want to take that route, I want to change it a little bit. If you click on the route and you find just any little spot, you can move it around. You can make it go a different direction. You can add destinations to your ride. Say you wanted to go to Empire and then over to a school. Well, you can just make that map work its way to the school after. So now you've created your map and you're happy with it, and you think, you know what, this is such a fantastic map. I want to share it with my friends. So you'll see the little people call this the little hamburger icon. So you click on that, and down here You can share or embed. And so embedding is in different apps. But if you just hit copy the link, you can email it or text it or whatever, depending on the device you're on. You can send it out.
Can you share it in the chat, Ken?
Share that link? Yes, if I got back to, can I do that? Can I do that later rather than lose my flow? I'll put all these links up.
Sorry.
I'll put all these links up later. I don't know how to find the chat here from now I'm screen sharing.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So is there a slide I should be addressing? I'm kind of off on my own here. So now I've got Fort to Port. So I think I should be back on the, if you want to bring up the slideshow again.
Absolutely. Perfect. So Ken just did our Google Maps demo. Thanks, Ken.
On track.
And that brings us to my section about urban. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the routes that I ride, why I've chosen them, why I love riding them. First, I just want to make you aware that earlier this year, Safe Cycling Thunder Bay worked on a series of virtual tours, and actually Ken and I were the ones to do it. So I'm going to just pull that up here. And you guys should be able to see this. So I'll share the link in the chat really quickly, which will just take a second, maybe. Yeah, this is hard. Ha! Okay, I'll share the link in the chat in a minute. But it's safecyclingthunderbay.com/virtual tours. So what we did was we put a bunch of routes online. So we have run a Discovery Ride series for a number of years. So these are group tours that we normally do in the summer. They're about 8 to 12 kilometers. There's one that's 15. And the goal is just to get people really comfortable with group riding in this casual group setting, and also to explore our neighborhoods. So on the right, you can see a lot of the tours that we've done in the past, you know, and some of them are kind of creative, like the Little Free Libraries of Port Arthur, Invasive Species Bike Tour, etc. And then on the left here are the school routes. So because we weren't able to run our bike rodeos in person, normally we run bike rodeos in May and June in elementary schools. We wanted to make sure that families had a resource that they could use to ride together. And so Ken put together all of these school routes, and they're about 3 to 5 kilometers. And then the previous cycling, the ones on the right, I had done as part of the Discovery Ride. So this is a really great resource that you can check out that can help you plan your ride. And I'll get into that a little bit more in a second. I want to pull up my favorite route, which I have up on the screen now. And I'll talk about why I love to ride this. Actually, I think I'm missing, I think I skipped something. Oh, here we go. I did. I'll get back to my ride in a second. So when you think about planning your route, there are 2 main reasons that you might be going out for a bike ride. You might be going for a recreational ride, or you might be going either for a commuting or another type of destination-oriented ride where you're trying to get somewhere. And regardless of which type of ride you're doing, the principles for planning are going to be the same, and the principles for making a good route are going to be the same. So you can see in this photo, the family is definitely going for a recreational ride. This is from our Amazing Race Discovery Ride a couple of years ago. So when I think about planning a good route, and I think about what is a good route, one thing that's really important to me is to use all of the tools in my tool belt. And here I'm using the word tools to refer to the different types of infrastructure that's available to me around the city. So residential roads are obviously a really great place to ride. Collector roads, so I'm thinking like Huron, Shunya, Walsh as examples, where they're a little bit higher traffic, but bike lanes are often found on collector roads. And then you've got arterial roads, which most people aren't comfortable riding on. So that's something that you want to definitely use sparingly. So those are those big 4-laners. As Ken mentioned, the Active Transportation Network in Thunder Bay is an option for riding, and that's a great tool in your tool belt. There are also tools like unpaved trails. So I'm thinking the LPH trail, the tree farm, and then neighborhood cut-throughs can be a really fun riding experience. So I've got one up on the screen, and you're gonna see this neighborhood cut-through later in my favorite route. So when I plan a discovery ride route, or when I plan my own ride, there are a bunch of components that I think about in order to make that ride enjoyable. So the tools that I talked about, using different types of infrastructure, avoiding 4 lanes, but then pedestrian crossings are a tool that you can use when you need to cross a 4 lane. So a 4-lane road doesn't need to be literally a roadblock to you. You can use a pedestrian crossing as a tool to access the other side. Right and left turns actually help make a really good route. So as cycling instructors, we plan a lot of routes with the objective of seeing our course participants kind of deliver on their course deliverables. So we need to make sure that we see our participants make right and left turns so that we know that they have those skills. But then when you think about planning a good ride, it actually transfers, and right and left turns are still a really important component in a good ride because they give you a sense of exploration and discovery of your neighborhood when you are winding and weaving through it. And you'll see that in the routes that come up. Finally, interesting things to see. So this picture on the left is from the Notable Trees tour that we did back in 2015. So you can see all of those participants around the huge tree. So that's an example of an interesting thing that you might incorporate into your route. Now I get to go through so many maps. I'm really excited. I love maps. And the photo is from our little free library tour a couple of years ago. So I'm gonna switch over to my map and go back to talking about my favorite route. This is my favorite route for recreational riding. It's not a destination ride. I live McIntyre and Algoma area, so I've mapped this from my neighborhood. I like to ride up McIntyre, up Farron, and then over to Mannion. So far it's just like quiet residential roads. But then there are some really great places to explore. So I'll zoom in a little bit. So this little bit of Doris here, there's a river trail at the end of that. And there are actually some bicycling jumps. And I do not do the bicycling jumps, but I do like to ride down to the end of the street and walk my bike to the river and just like sit and have a couple of chill moments by the river. That's super lovely. And then I like to come over here and I ride Hourigan Crescent. So one of the things about Google Maps is that it doesn't always know where you can go as a cyclist. So sometimes it doesn't take you the way that you're actually going. But I like to come around Hourigan here, and there's a little free library just this side of the curve. And I just like to stop there and check it out. And then one thing that Google Maps doesn't seem to know is here is that from this kind of circular point on Hourigan up to Gibbon, there is a pedestrian cut through. So that's the one that was in the picture earlier. So I like to take that and I come up to Gibbon and then kind of come up by St. Margaret School. And I call this the river route. So I go over a series of bridges. I cross this Clate Street pedestrian bridge, and then I come up, I think that's Hartvigsen, because there's actually another bridge here. And Google doesn't seem to know that bridge is there because it didn't direct me that way, but that's a lovely bridge to ride. And then I cut through to Don Street and then David Street. And then this short road here is actually not a road, but a pedestrian cut through. And then I kind of zip home on those collectors on Huron and Shunya in the bike lane. So this is definitely a route that I would recommend to a family. It's very safe, it's very quiet, primarily residential, but to me, it's a great route because I have interesting destinations, the little free library, the creek, the like little spot by the river where I can go and sit. And then it's also just got this awesome fun zigzag. So it has this sense of exploration. And then it's really fun to ride the bridges and all of the neat components like the pedestrian cut throughs. But then when I take that, you can take those same principles and apply them anywhere. So I'm going to pull up one of our virtual tours. I'm going to pull up, it's called Northwoods Zigzag 2. This is one of my favorites. This was a ride called Shelby's Poker Tour that we did last summer. And we met in Humber Park And then our goal was just to explore Northwood, zigzag around Northwood, and then we had poker stops and got ice cream at the end. So here's somewhere where we employed our pedestrian crossing to get across James. We were a group of 12, and it's always more prudent to pedestrian crossing groups, but for anybody, pedestrian crossing James is likely to be a more comfortable option. And then we kind of cut a diagonal through Uniberry Parkette here, and then just started zigzagging in the neighborhood on Newberry, on University, Sherbrooke. And then we picked up Redwood here. Redwood is an example of a street that really varies in traffic based on time of day. So there are a couple of schools on Redwood, and at pickup and drop off times, it's very busy. But we were doing this on a weekend, so it was nice and calm. And then we got to what I think is the most fun part of the route, which is that Northwood has a lot of what I call lollipop streets. So Spruce Court is an example. So I'm just going to move my mouse and you'll be able to see that Spruce Court, this is where the actual road is. So it kind of forms a lollipop. And then we take this little pedestrian path and we cross to another lollipop. So here is Hemlock, and it's another lollipop-shaped street. And if you kind of search around Northwood, you'll see that there are lots of lollipop-shaped streets. So Pineview Bay, Sycamore Avenue and Sycamore Place. And then there's one really cool one over here, Simon Fraser Drive. This is a nice place to ride too, because there's this, it's kind of a lollipop with two sticks. And then as a cyclist, you can cut this path or any of these paths through the park that go down the middle of the center of the lollipop. So that's a really fun place to ride. And here's another kind of lollipop. This is a lollipop with two sticks that we incorporated into our route. So that's really cool. And then we can start to think about taking the same principles and applying them to our commuting route. So for instance, just to take the same Northwood map as an example, if I lived at Sir Winston Churchill swimming pool or thereabouts, and I wanted to go to the college or the university or anywhere else that's kind of up in this upper right-hand corner of my screen or beyond, as a driver, I would probably be on Edwards. But as a cyclist, I have this really fun opportunity to take the zigzagging blue route that's up on the screen. It's not fast, it's not slower, it's definitely safer, and I really get to explore my neighborhood and zigzag through it. So that's a super cool option. And I'm going to pull up my own commuting route next, and you can see how that works. So as I mentioned, I work at Eco Superior and live around Algoma and McIntyre. And if I just ask Google how I should bike to work, this is what they tell me. So Google tells me to bike up river, but I don't want to do that because it's a big 4-lane road. It's intimidating. I don't want to contend with traffic. And then think about like biking up that hill with all the cars waiting behind. That would be nerve-wracking. So if I rode to work this way, when I think about my commute, what I'm thinking of it as a stressful experience. It's not something that I'm looking forward to. I'm going to pull up the route I actually take now. So this is the route that I actually take, and you'll see it has a lot of similarities to the kind of Northwood route and the neighborhood route that I ride. So I like to go up McIntyre to Briarwood, and then from here I've got lots of opportunities to explore. So usually I take the route in blue, which is Bentwood to, I think this is Cottonwood. But sometimes I feel like going a different way. So sometimes I'll take Autumnwood, sometimes I'll take Parsons and Elm. And then like over here, sometimes I'll take Melvin or Parsons, or I think this is maybe Gordon. And then that connects me to the High Street bike lane, from which point it's pretty straightforward. So I really like this route. When I think about my commute in the morning, I'm thinking about how it's going to be fun to ride through the neighborhood, how, which road will I take today, and am I going to explore? The other thing that I really like about this route is on River Street, you do that hill in one straight shot. But because this route zigzags, I go up a bit of hill and then I turn and I get something that's kind of flat. And then I turn and I get a bit of hill and then I get something kind of flat. So it does shake it up quite a bit in terms of the terrain as well, which I like to not have to conquer that big hill in one go. So that's my piece about residential and commuting riding and what I look for in a really good route. I'm going to pass you over to Ken. As we mentioned when it came up in the comments, we're going to do the port to fort route. So that's what Ken will talk about next. So Ken, you can override my share whenever you like.
Okay, I will do that. So to go north to south across Thunder Bay is quite daunting. I've been talking to the city and about it for years, and hopefully we'll get some traction someday and get some protected bike lanes through here. But what Google Maps does when you put in an address like Port Arthur Health Center, that's pretty much where I live, and then Arthur and Vickers Street, which is where I worked before I retired, it'll give you a straight through route right down. You'll see here is going to be Court Street, Fort William, and then Fort William all the way down. Now, when I was doing this route, I found I would prefer to do Memorial Avenue instead of Algoma and Memorial Avenue instead. It just felt a little more direct, and it's actually, yeah, so it seemed to work out better for me. And that was at 6:30 in the morning. So no vehicles, it was super quiet on the road, and away I went. The problem being, on the way home from Arthur and Vickers, on these Memorial and Fort William Road, it's a lot less fun. So you're sharing lanes. You have to take the lane because the lanes are too narrow, and you've got people with pickup trucks on your back constantly. So you see Google has suggested another way, and this way will take you across down Williams, and then there's the bridge, May Street to Memorial, and then Carrick Street. So I came up with a version of that, and I fine-tuned it a little bit, and it is here. So you'll know that there is a train bridge here that I wouldn't recommend you taking, but that's you didn't hear it from me. So then you would go Carrick Street, which is quiet. It's not the best for shoulders, but it's very quiet. And then along, you've got your lights at Harbor Expressway. So there's lots of room there for a cyclist. And then they put in a set of lights at Central Avenue. So your downtown Volkswagen is here, and the Cal Tire. And then this is the dog park in here. So it's going to be your off-road on a trail. I could switch to satellite just so you see that for a second. So it's a green space. So when I was on my ride home from work, this is a great place to stop and check your phone or whatever, have a look around and relax a bit before you end up back in traffic again. So I'm going to go back to just maps now. So there is a little spot here where there's a train or a culvert that gets you over to Winnipeg Street. And the Google Maps at this point, it wants you to go straight across the road here. I believe it's either on 2nd Avenue. So at this point at 2nd Avenue, it's very busy. There's 5 lanes of traffic. It's just relentless, the vehicles at 5:30 or 4:30 or whatever in the afternoon. So I stayed on Winnipeg, and either I went on, what is this street here, Ishkinin, and I would go through, I'd either cut through Gore Motors, or you can go across at Queen Street. And the trick to that is, because now you're going across High Street, it's only two lanes here. It's easy to get across, and there's a lot of traffic that goes up High Street. You'll find that on Memorial Avenue, yes, it's still 5 lanes, but there just seems to be more breaks in traffic at this point. And you can get yourself in first gear and hit the pedals, and you can get across in when there's some breaks in traffic. The other way I was thinking about to get home from here is Ontario Street, and you're going across Oliver Road, 4 lanes. There's a bit of a blind spot here around Kangasana, but it's fine. And then I would take Ontario to Secord, and the formerly known as Hoyto is here, and you're going past that to go home. Or I would go Court Street, and there's bike lanes on Court Street, and away you go up north. So another way I get across town sometimes, so when my wife and I are shopping with the tandem, sometimes we have like 3 or 4 places to go. So we might go downtown on this route and go to Superstore or something. And then on the way home, if we'd gone to, say, Intercity Mall, I'll just get into Intercity. So this is another example of where Google Maps doesn't know what a bicycle can do. So if you're into the Intercity parking lot and you are out by past where the Sears, formerly known as Sears, is, you'll find that there's a bit of a desire line at this corner where lots of pedestrians and cyclists cross. And I find that you've got lots of visibility here. You can see vehicles coming from both directions, and you can kind of go across where the railway tracks are. So Google's telling you to go Memorial. I'm suggesting you go this way, especially if you've got little people in tow. So you end up on, this is Field Street. So this is a little trail. It's not even named here. And then you're on Field, and then you're seeing Walmart area. So you've got the, I don't know what they call this shop, well, Thunder Bay Shopping Center. Thank you very much. And so again, Google doesn't realize what a bicycle can do. So you can carefully cross the shopping center parking lot and come out here where this vehicle is, cross Central, and you'll see another desire line. So sometimes I've done this in the wintertime and it gets a little dicey. There's another spot here you can get through. And then Google's taken us all over the place. But what I do is I just go to High Street South, and then High Street South takes you up into First Avenue, Ontario, Spofford. And look, now you're on Fort William Road. And this is where the bike lanes continue to Port Arthur. So that's it for urban riding. As you can see, I've been at this for quite a long time, and I've got some little tricks to get people around. And that's one of the things I really loved when we were putting courses on at the Canada Games Complex, is to take people through these places. So I look forward to doing that again. And that's about it for us on urban riding, right, Caroline? And so I'm going to pass it over to Ashley and Janet.
Perfect. And I will get the presentation up for you guys. All right. So I'll hand you guys over to Janet.
Hi, everybody. Can we switch the, yeah. So we have some planning considerations. So the type of bike you have, or the type of bike you're considering buying, will kind of dictate where and how far you can ride rural. If you, and not to say you can't ride a mountain bike or a hybrid bike, it might take you a little bit longer, but it can be done. There's also, you can do a gravel bike as well. Road bike. My road bike, I had them put on a little extra wide tires because I knew that I'd be doing rural riding. And you can be out rural riding and the pavement changes, or the surface. So you could be, you know, riding along and all of a sudden you're on gravel. So that's why I had them change my tires to be a little bit wider. I also find on the mountain bike and the hybrid, which I've ridden both of them rural, the gearing's a little bit different as well. So that's another thing to consider when you're deciding to ride rural. The other thing is too, you want to decide on how far you want to ride. you're not going to ride 70 kilometers right off the bat, especially with a mountain bike or a hybrid bike. What else is there? Also, that there's a lot of hills when you're rural riding as well. So that's another thing to consider when you're deciding on type of bike that you have as well. I'm trying to think of some other options. Actually, do you have any, like for the type of bikes? Because I know just with the gearing and stuff, I found it hard with my, even my mountain bike and the tires too.
Yeah.
Even though you're going from pavement to gravel.
Yeah. Yeah, so tires make a big difference, like the type of tire that you have. So mountain bikes or like gravel bikes might have those like knobby, knobby tires. So they're great because you can like go on different surfaces quite smoothly and stuff. But the downside is that they can slow you down. So if you're riding with somebody who has like, let's say they're called slicks, where the tires are actually all smooth, then they might be able to ride a lot faster than you. So that's like the downside of maybe riding a mountain bike with folks who are using road bikes, is like you can definitely complete the your route and stuff. You actually might just be a little bit behind them, just depending, or having to work harder to go the same speed as them, depending on their riding level as well.
I also find with the gearing, especially when you're going up and down the hills with your hybrid or your mountain bike, the gearing's a little bit different compared to the road bikes as well. So that's another thing to consider. It will slow you down as well. Ashley, do you want to talk about purpose?
Yep. Yeah, so when I do some rides, so actually more recently over the past year, I've actually started riding with a group of women who I really didn't know very well until I started riding with them, or actually I didn't really know them at all. It just kind of started a little bit by fluke, where some people were just trying to get into riding, and so it's kind of like a word of mouth, friend of a friend kind of thing. And so we actually ride as a group of ladies, like 10 of us, I think, ride. And so there's all different skill levels. And so when we're thinking about places that like we want to go, we're actually thinking a little bit about like what the purpose is. And the purpose actually depends on who we're riding with. So sometimes we want it to be a really social ride. So we actually want to be able to stop at multiple places, stop for a long time, maybe a half an hour, and that sort of thing, and be able to chat with each other, and just really kind of enjoy, catch up, that sort of stuff. Sometimes we have folks who just want to do what they would call like a fitness ride. So riding for really just fitness reasons, to increase their like their cardiovascular capacity. So it still can be social and that sort of stuff, but the focus isn't something social. So if we're planning a fitness ride, we might choose a route where we don't have to stop a lot, maybe where there's more hills, where we're not able to ride side by side at a lot of places as well. So so you'll notice in the two pictures that we have, so the first one, the top one, is actually of Oliver Road, and so the first picture is one where you're actually, so Safe Cycling doesn't recommend that people ride side by side, but we know that it does happen. It's especially popular among riding groups as well, but really, so something like Oliver Street doesn't allow you to ride side by side. And actually there's a couple of other places where you're not able to ride side by side. So take Shunya, for example, or if you're riding down Lakeshore, the municipality of Shunya actually has a bylaw that says you can't ride side by side. So if you're wanting a social ride that and wanting to talk to each other while you're biking, probably not a great spot to go, because there is that bylaw there. So do you want to go to the next one, Janet?
Okay.
Oh, sorry, go back.
Right. Go back.
There we go.
So you talked a little bit about your skill and your fitness level. So again, on your first ride, you don't want to head out and do a 50-kilometer ride if you're not like for your first ride. also for skill level too, we're talking about some of these rural roads can be busy. If you're heading out Oliver Road, you want to make sure that you're comfortable. You can ride a straight line. Because you have faster moving traffic you're traveling with, you have bigger traffic, so you have larger traffic that you're traveling with. So I know Oliver Road, when I take it out to Kakabeka, there's a lot of dump trucks. There's a lot of people pulling RVs. So you need to make sure that you can ride a straight line at least. Know your signals, communicate. You want to make sure that you're seen on these roads as well. And again, your fitness level too, because some of these roads you're riding up and down the hills. You can stop if you don't think you're going to be able to ride up the hill. You can stop and walk your bike. The other thing is too, for the your skill level too, is using your gears properly and knowing how to use your gears. So like I say, Stanley, I love going out and riding out there because I get to practice going up and down the hills and using my gears properly on those hills as well. So again, these are some of the things to consider. You know, how fit are you? How far do you want to go? Also, if you're doing a ride, say you're doing 25 or whatever, you have to make sure if you're going out, you either have to have someone to pick you up at the other end if you can't make it. So you want to make sure you have a cell phone, or you have to make sure that you're able to get back to your starting destination. Do you have anything else, Ashley?
Well, so just to add just a little bit about like your comfort riding level. So Janet talked about the faster traffic speeds. Often it's usually between 50 and 90 kilometers an hour, depending on where you're riding. So just knowing that the traffic does speed up quite a bit. The other piece is your comfort with riding on gravel. So it's vastly different from riding on pavement, right? And so if you're somebody who has never ridden on gravel before, I would actually recommend before you go riding that you just try to get out somewhere just to practice that, just so you know what it's like, and can figure, okay, this is something that I can do for a couple kilometers, or you know what, I just want to avoid gravel roads for the first little bit, because there is an increased risk with going on gravel, and just depending also the time of season, how slippery it might be, if the road's washed out, that sort of stuff. So just something to be mindful of for sure. Yeah. So when we were looking at kind of rural riding, there's definitely like a couple types of riding that you could do, in terms of whether like you're just wanting to do a loop, or if you're wanting to do a destination ride. So my favorite is actually to do destination rides. So for me, that entails picking a starting point, and then picking like where I want to ride to. So what I had mentioned before, that one of my favorite spots was Kakabeka Falls. So usually I would just ride out to Kakabeka, stop at something like the Metropolitan Moose or Kakabeka Falls for maybe about a half an hour, and then come back. So these are just a couple of destination rides that we've done before, or that I've done before, and really that I like to do quite a bit of the time. So I'll at least try to get out, like in a season, I try to get out to like these places at least once, if not twice. I think I've done Kakabeka about 4 times this summer already. So that's pretty fun. And then just keeping in mind that the routes to these places are going to be busier depending on the type of season. So for instance, if it's fall time, or even like getting into like midsummer stuff, riding out to Blues Farms, actually the road's probably going to be quite busy, because you've got like the strawberry pickers, you've got the raspberry pickers, and then the fall time they always do like their fall harvest stuff, so with their pumpkin patch and things like that. Okay.
So we have some rural maps that you can look at. So we'll start with the Kakabeka one. There's different ways to go out to Kakabeka. This one is starting out on Roslyn Road. I like these maps also because it'll tell you, it'll kind of give you an estimate on time that it's going to take you. So this is a map that's going out of, I think this one going Roslyn Road, I think, right? So this is a loop. You go through Stanley as well. So on this one, you can also pick, like if you wanted to stop and have something to, you know, eat, or at the Eddy. So this is one of the routes. I think actually you do this route out to Quequebeca, right? I usually do when I'm doing my route, because I live on the Port Arthur side. I usually head out and do my route out Oliver Road and make my way over to Pole Line. I know Roslyn Road's a little bit quieter than heading out Oliver Road. Oliver Road, it's busy. So if I'm going to Quequebeca, I usually start out first thing early in the morning, anywhere from 7:30, usually 8 o'clock, because I want to get out before all the traffic starts. And then even coming back sometimes in the afternoon can be a little bit hectic. But once you get over to Pole Line, it's Pole Line's a little quieter. It's just Oliver Road that you have to contend with. Do you want to go to the next one?
So this should be your Murillo route.
Yeah, this is the Murillo route. And this, I think, is heading out. We start at the university and head out. So this is a quick little route. It's almost 2 hours to do this route. So you're heading out, you've got a little bit of Oliver Road. It's just if you just want something that's, I want to say, we call them quick and dirty routes. So you get in and do your little ride and you're back. Ashley, do you want to?
Yep, so I'm just gonna screen share, Caroline. That's okay. Okay. Continue, yep. Share. Yep. Oh, help if I can move this to the bottom. So this is actually a route that I did a couple of weeks ago. So it's not exactly like a quick, so it's not a loop route, but it's pretty close to one. So I actually drove out to the Niebing as a good starting point. It's somewhere that's actually quite common for people to start out at. It's also a good ending point if you wanted to grab a bite to eat, that sort of thing. Probably more under normal non-COVID circumstances, but so this is where, so we'd start out at the Niebing down to Highway 61, turning on to 130. And then, so we just make a right all the way to 588. And then up to close to the Stanley, so we don't go up that hill, although sometimes I'll choose to ride up it just for fun, that sort of thing, all the way to the highway back down. It's probably more fun to ride down than anything. And then down Roslyn Road to back, and then back to 130. And then you can just actually make your way all the way back to the to Highway 61 again. So what I like about this route is that, so one, if I need to refill my water bottle at the Stanley, there's that Stanley water spring there. But then if I need a little bit of a rest too, in Roslyn, there's always like the Lulu's Variety and stuff. So a couple times I've actually stopped there and just picked up like a Gatorade, that sort of stuff. For me, these rides are a little bit less enjoyable, although I do like them, just because there's not a designated stop spot. So this one would be more fitness, because I'm not spending like a half an hour just kind of chilling out in Quequebeca or even Murillo, that sort of thing. So yeah, it's a little bit different, but still fun nonetheless. It's a good rural ride. You're getting to see like some different roads that like you wouldn't normally go on, that sort of stuff, for sure. And then the other piece that I just wanted to show you quickly would be, so this is the Thunder Bay Cycling Club website. So their website is tbaycc.ca. So you do have to be a member to be able to ride with the cycling clubs. However, if you go to their website and under, it's on the right-hand side here, it says Rides T-Bay. They actually have a number of routes starting from a number of different starting points. So I'll just click one here. So start point, Lakehead University. So these are rural rides, and they actually have a couple that are starting from Lakehead University. So you can actually kind of scroll through. So they have, it's actually nice because they have like the route description. So they actually tell you how far you're going, where you're turning, that sort of thing. And this says that it's a challenging route, so it's a little bit more difficult. And then part of that is probably because of like some of the hills and things like that as well. And it tells you the elevation. What's nice about this route, or the routes on here, is that if you do have the cycling app called Strava, you can actually just send it to your device and it will give you the instructions on where to go and how to get there, that sort of stuff as well. Ooh, my mistake there. And so if you're interested, you can actually just play around. There's like, I want to say at least 15 or 20 routes from different like starting points, or different routes, different distances as well. You know, there's a couple like 20-25 kilometer distances, that sort of stuff, right? So it's another great resource. I also know that if you just Google Thunder Bay rural cycling routes, a couple of people have actually just posted some of their favorite routes. So that's something that's really neat as well. So Caroline, if I could just get you to go back to the PowerPoint. Perfect.
Perfect. And this is just my time warning for you guys. We're going to finish the presentation before time. We might go over with the Q&A, but I know that these remaining points are pretty concise, so this should be good.
So it'll probably be about 2 minutes. So we just have a couple of extra points to consider. So when you're on your rural ride, it's obviously a little bit different than if you're in the city. Thinking about where you're going to be able to use the washroom, right? So on a ride that's not a destination ride, right? Like the one that I just that I showed you that kind of goes the loop, there really wasn't a washroom that we could use on that route. So in that case, you kind of just had to be prepared and that sort of thing. So if you know that you're going to have to go to the washroom, bringing something like toilet paper and finding a spot kind of alongside the road is something that's actually fairly common. But you know, just knowing where like a restaurant is, so if you're riding to Quebec, oh, where can I use the washroom? Well, there's actually a couple of places, right? And that sort of thing. So doing your research beforehand, just knowing where you might want to refill your water bottle, find something to eat. Taking a double check of what that weather forecast is. Is it going to be sunny? Am I going to, like, how hot is it going to be? Is it going to be cold? Is it going to be rainy? And really dressing appropriately. Depending on where you're going, you know, always check to make sure that you have cell service, or if you're depending on your cell phone for like to be able to like call for a ride home and that sort of thing. And make sure that it's charged too. Can't tell you how many times I've been on a ride with folks who are relying on their cell phone and then it's dead. So just making sure that your cell phone's in good working order, making sure that you know your route. So I always have a paper copy with me, especially if I don't know the route. So something like Quebec is actually fairly, because I do it quite a bit, I don't need like the paper copy anymore, but something like then starting from the Niebing and that route, I always bring the paper copy, and I always have like kind of try to know where I am, and just making sure each individual rider knows where they're going and that sort of stuff. Because sometimes we ride at different speeds, and you know, it's great when one person knows the route, but if the other people are kind of trailing behind and they don't know the route, that could actually be quite, like, it can be troublesome, right? And then if it is a new route for you, just consider driving the route before you ride it, checking out for construction so you know how busy it might be and that sort of thing.
Safety equipment is basically the same as the urban riding, but just remember when you're rural riding, you need to be more self-sufficient. So make sure that you do have a spare tube, your pump and your tools in case you do get a flat tire. But basically, otherwise it's the same as urban riding.
All right, well, thank you guys very much. We are happy to take a Q&A in the chat now. Hopefully I will be able to pull up the chat. I've been having some trouble pulling it up while I'm screen sharing. So if I can't pull it up, then I will have to stop screen sharing and you'll just have to look at the cycling instructors, and that's what's happening.
I put an answer that came up in the chat. So somebody asked where the trail ends as you head up the Niebing. It ends about parallel with Movati. Well, I had to Google that, being a northerner. So that's the Movati Athletics Center. I looked at the transportation master plan and had a look at their ultimate cycling network. And actually the city plans on going farther there. So there's a link in there. I could share my screen quickly and show you what they have planned. This is where that spot is, where the Movati is. And there's some trails going here. I'm not too familiar with it, but it goes, I guess it goes on over to the Highway 1117. And what is this? 20th Side Road. So there you go. So they're gonna keep going as they develop the trail system.
So Cass, I just had a question. So were you thinking about maybe just like riding a little bit more rural, like after you got to like the end of the trail there? Yeah. Okay. So again, it's a suggestion to avoid the main road. So I guess, so I was looking a little bit at a map as well. And maybe Caroline, I'll just share the screen for a second. Great. Because I did have, so I was looking at a little bit of a map for you as well. So if you're at this Movati, kind of over here, but you're wanting to do more kind of riding, like more riding, there's right now, because it's not developed, there's not a lot of great areas. So crossing over at this kind of like Tim Hortons and getting over into like the Ottawa Street, Clifton Ave area. And then, so probably across Arthur, you'd want to just maybe do a little bit of a walk depending on the time of the day. But if you can get into like the Mountvale area here, and over to Walsh and Niebing, these are, so depending on the time of day, obviously if it's like 5 o'clock, it's going to be a little bit more busy, but on an early morning, stuff like Wall Street, Niebing Ave isn't busy, and you're able to go down Roslyn, and it's really, there's really not a lot of traffic or anything down there. And it can be actually quite a lovely ride too, depending on how far you're wanting to go. Really anything back in here, it's not in these like rural, these kind of residential areas, earlier mornings, not super busy, that sort of thing as well.
Yeah, one thing that I'd like to add that has been kind of like important to me as a cycling instructor to get across is that not all routes are made for cyclists. Unfortunately, there are some places you just can't go safely or sometimes legally. So the Terry Fox Lookout is an example. There's no safe or legal way to get there. Arthur Street is generally a road that our instructors don't think is great for cycling. The 4-lane section of Fort William Road would be another. But route planning can be a really important component in finding the safe routes that you can use as alternatives. So hopefully we have given you some of those.
I have a suggestion from my wife that's been listening intently to this presentation. And if you're ever stuck, if you look at the road and it's just too intimidating, don't be ashamed to get off and hit that pedestrian button, beg button, and walk across and continue when it's safe to do so. I don't know if we brought that up during the presentation.
We have a question that came in from John. I am 67 years old and I live in Roslyn. Is there a good bike lock that is not too heavy? I have a good bike lock, but it is heavy. Do any of you guys have? And I would also add that cable locks are quite easy to cut. So unless you're riding somewhere that's very low risk, which maybe Roslyn is, and you also have a bike that's not super valuable, I would advise against a cable lock and in favor of a chain or a U. Or you might actually, there are some collapsible locks. Maybe I'll get a link for you in the chat, John, because I think those are a bit lighter. Ashley, Janet, Ken, do you have any other suggestions regarding lock?
What was that? Lock. Sorry, I was going to say, what was the lock? Was it Jonas had that one lock? Because that one was pretty light. I'm not sure what it was made out of, but that one, he said was a good lock. It kind of expanded. It was a neat one. I have a kryptonite. Mine is heavy.
Mhm.
I found the folding lock. Was it a folding lock that Jonas had, Janet?
I think so.
Okay, I'm gonna send John. I'm gonna send you in the chat a link. So the website that I like to use when I'm researching locks is called The Best Bike Lock, and they have a review of all of the folding locks, which do tend to be a bit lighter. So I'm gonna send that to you in the chat.
Mhm.
So feel free to check that out. And that site in general is a good place to explore, but the folding lock page is probably a good fit for you.
Yes.
I just wanted to add that there's some stores I don't use a lock when I go shopping because I bring the bicycle in. At the LCBO on Cumberland Street. There's no bike racks there, and I just bring my bike in and I leave it with the cashier, and I'm only in there 5 minutes. Another place I do that is actually at Rolling Thunder. There's no bike rack there, so I bring the bicycle in, and they're happy to have another bicycle inside. So that's an option if you forget your bike lock is to bring it into the store. Most stores don't mind.
Hmm.
If you can bring a wheelchair in, you can bring a bicycle in, I say.
Yeah. And they said right now that the bike thefts are up right now because everybody's buying bikes. So something to consider.
Perfect.
Ashley,
I'm just going to jump in. Sorry to say that I'm going to give folks one more minute while the instructors are talking to put any final questions into the chat.
I was just going to mention too, we never talked about if you're doing rural riding, you can always bring your bike out and start someplace. Instead of like riding from home and out, you can always just bring your bike and maybe start at Kekabeka or, you know, take your bike and start from the Nebing. Those are some other options.
Perfect. All right. Well, we will wrap up there. And for us panelists, if we want to chat further via email and do an email debrief. Oh, we have somebody. I'm participating from New York City during coronavirus pandemic. Has bike shop inventory your way caught up to demand?
No, not even close.
No.
No, I think I'd be shocked if I think that there's a few bikes left in town like for sale. I would say that they're probably the more expensive bikes, like on the higher price end, like, well, maybe not like super high, but I know Fresh Air right now has a list of people who are wanting bikes, but they just don't have them. So when they come in, they're pretty much sold within the first day that they're there. And then people are either still on the list, that sort of thing. Rolling Thunder has a few bikes but left, but like I think the starting price is like $1,600 for those. And I know Petrie's doesn't actually have anything. I was there the other day, so they said,
Wow.
and like no road bikes, like hardly any gravel bikes, that sort of stuff. So
Yeah, and the youth store community spokes, because they take donations, they had so many bikes in reserve and in storage that in the past, prior to the pandemic, they were having to sometimes throw them out because they just had too many bikes. But I know Ian at Community Spokes has been turning over bikes as fast as he can, and they're just kind of rushing out the door. So I think he has bikes, but it's just because he's a youth store, it's just a matter of how quick can he turn them over with those repairs for sale. And I know he's been pretty outpaced as well.
limited selection.
Yeah.
Bicycle Renaissance.
Okay, somebody asked me for the Best Bike Lock website, and it is thebestbikelock.com, which is just above in the chat. I directed to the folding locks page, but you could use the same link to get to kind of the Best Bike Lock home. And that website, I think it's just fantastic. That's how I learn about bike locks and what features to look for. And the person in New York City does not have a name on their account, they're just owner. And they've pointed out that it's time to play hockey. And I think that that's a great note to end on, because some of us might have hockey commitments. I don't, but yeah, so
He owns New York City.
Thank you guys so much for joining us today.
Doug.
I hope you learned a little bit about route planning, mapping, and kind of how to plan and prepare. So thank you, everybody.
That was fun.
Thank
We'll do it again.
you.
All right, thanks.